Today we're talking about kicks, specifically the thrusting kicks versus the rising kicks. So, let's do that. Hey, what's up? I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and each week I release videos in the martial arts, philosophy, technique, training, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of thing you're into. I hope you stick around. Hope that you subscribe. Hope that you share this with people. Hope that you enjoy it. I don't know. I just have a lot of hopes. Anyway, let's talk about kicks today. We're going to specifically talk about the front kick, Maegeri Keikomi, the thrusting front kick, versus Maegeri Keiage, the rising front kick, and what's maybe a little bit different about them, and what I think is the actual mechanic that I think is really important if you're going to throw a thrusting kick well. But to do that, we're going to need to go outside. Now, to talk about these kicks, to talk about the mechanics of it and the leverage that we're using, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is leverage. And to go over that, we're going to be taking apart and lifting this carport. Truth be told, I've already done this once. This was something that I did, and I realized the connection with what we're talking about. So I'm going to do it again, but only halfway, because there's a lot of work. So there's two types of front kick. There's Keikomi and Keiage. Keiage is rising, Keikomi is thrusting, and we're talking about the thrusting kick. The problem with thrusting is a lot of people want to do it a Keiage way, just they think lower. They think, well, I'll just kick to a lower level and that's all it takes. But to kick to a lower level is not the same as changing the mechanic of the kick. Let me show you what I mean. So looking at that, looking at the way we kick, Keiage as a rising kick for rising or higher targets, right? So I want to come up with that. The thing about Keikomi is it's thrusting, and it can thrust high, it can thrust low. The level doesn't really matter. It's the mechanic of the kick. So when I kick, it's here. A lot of people, they want to throw that kick and they want to rise that kick, and that energy goes up. Well, where does that go wrong? Well, to show that, we're going to lift this roof. So what I've got is a really long 2x4. And we look at that rising mechanic, that leverage that it hits, and the energy is sliding up the surface rather than lifting and pushing the surface. And so if I come to this, I set this, I brace it, and I just push, I get a little bit, but it's really hard to go ahead and continue to push this leverage and actually raise this. There's a lot of energy lost doing it this way. So let's employ a different mechanic and see how this works. Now this part is specific to what we're doing with this roof, but I'll include it anyway in case you find yourself doing something like this. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape measure and I'm going to go ahead and run it down and get a measurement of the distance. Now, I happen to know that this tape measure, and they're marked this way, takes up an additional 3 inches. So I've got 83 inches, that's telling me that I've got 86 inches. So you don't have to always do this whole thing to find out 86. You can actually just run just like that to get your measurement. So I've got 86 inches. So the first thing I want to do is I want to cut this board down to 86 inches, and that's where we're going to start. So now I mentioned that we're going to cut this to 86 inches, and I lied to you, because in order to raise that, 86 is just going to meet that. I want to raise it, we'll say 3 or 4 inches. So we'll go ahead and we'll just cut it at 90 inches. That way we have a little bit of lift. We got to have lift or it doesn't do what we need it to do, right? So I take this out, I bring this to 90. And I didn't bring a pencil with me, so we'll look at just using that end to hook and this end to score. And now we're ready for our cut. There we go. Now let's do the magic. So you might be wondering how this all comes together with a kick. And we all know that legs don't come with just a single joint at the hip, right? So let's go ahead and let's take this board. And it doesn't actually matter where. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle. And let's give ourselves a knee joint. So now what I have are two boards, the sum of which add to 90 inches, which is exactly what we needed to do our 86 inches plus a little extra to raise the roof. Now I'm going to take this additional offcut. You actually need 3 total boards to do this. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to fasten it down to one of these, not both. Of course, when you do it, make sure that you use 2 screws just so that that thing doesn't swivel on you. You want it to be sturdy. So now I've got my impromptu knee joint. Lastly, I turn the whole thing over. And I'm going to go ahead and take a screw and I'm going to go through just this board so I don't have to do it later. Okay, so there we go. Stuck in, but not quite done. So now let's see how this improves our kicks. I'm going to take my 2 boards. I'm going to go ahead and give a knee joint, because what we need to do is be able to actually compress from the middle and not from the end. So when we rise and do a rising kick, that we're trying to raise with our hip to do all the work. And I don't want to raise with that. I want to use that knee joint and I want to push out. So that's what we're going to do right now. And a quick note, I do this every time. I actually want this screw to be on this board here. So let's solve that problem before we get started. Okay, so now you can see that we've got our knee joint. We're going to go ahead and set this here. We're going to set this here. I'm going to put that together, and now I've got my knee joint. So I've got my leg, I've got the hip connection, I've got the foot connection, the connection that's actually doing the work, and then I've got the knee that's going to help me apply the leverage. Now I'm just going to take and set and just push. You can see the whole thing rises up, locks in straight, and then in this case, if you're doing anything like this, you need to go ahead and lock that so it doesn't go anywhere. So now our roof is lifted, our force has been delivered directly forward, not difficult at all, and that maximized the energy that we were able to use. This is exactly how I think the kick should deliver energy. When I draw a line from my hip to my foot to the target, my knee should be higher than that, so that as it extends, it compresses out. We'll loosen the screw so we can look at that just one more time. So if I look, remembering that's my hip joint, remembering that's the target that I want, remembering that's the foot. When you look at this, this can be the line of energy that I'm using. I want my knee to be higher than the target. So when the kick extends and the energy pushes through, that knee collapses down and expands the space to be able to create that kick. That is the thrusting energy that I'm talking about. Notice that when this is going, I could actually raise this significantly higher just by changing my measurements and making sure that my other posts that are holding the roof in place are loose and allowing for that as well. But this is so strong and so capable, and that is why I think a thrusting kick is so strong and so capable. It's such a useful way to deliver energy. Rising kicks are really good at hitting specific targets, but they're not necessarily good at moving somebody off of you or creating space or distance, and they're definitely not as good at putting energy through someone. So next time you throw a thrusting kick, maybe consider this handy jack we just built.
Well, there you have it. That's my feelings on the thrusting kick, specifically the MIG area we talked about today. But realistically, if you look at it and you take that plane and you flip it 90 degrees, then you have the same mechanics for the thrusting side kick also versus the rising side kick. Thrusting side kick is probably my favorite kick that I throw all the time, especially in sparring, more consensual violence kind of situations. Front kick is probably more applicable for a defensive situation, because you don't have to actually turn away from anybody. You can stay facing on and deliver a lot of force directly into them. But the leg position, the relationship between the hip, the knee, and the ankle all marry up together to be able to deliver that thrusting power that we looked at when we built our rudimentary 2x4 wood jack today. Hope you also enjoyed learning how to make that jack, and maybe some little tips and things here and there for other projects that you might do. If you've got cool tips on how you do woodworking or home renovation, DIY, that kind of stuff, shoot them my way. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. In the meantime, if you like these kind of videos, you like what I'm doing, you can subscribe right here. You can look at a playlist of videos like this right here, and a couple more videos you might like right here. I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and I'll catch you in the next one.